The United States Constitution is a living document designed to evolve with the changing needs and values of the nation. Since its ratification in 1788, it has been amended 27 times. In this video, we will delve into the amendments from the 13th to the 27th, exploring their origins, impacts, and lasting significance. 13th Amendment, Abolition of Slavery. The 13th Amendment, ratified on December 6, 1865, stands as one of the most transformative changes to the Constitution. This powerful amendment abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime. Its passage marked the culmination of the long and bloody struggle of the Civil War, which had torn the nation apart. The amendment's concise language belies its profound impact. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States, or any place subject to their jurisdiction. The abolition of slavery was a monumental step towards justice and equality, but it was only the beginning. The amendment laid the groundwork for future legislation aimed at dismantling the remnants of slavery and addressing racial discrimination. Personal stories of former slaves transitioning to freedom, such as those documented in the slave narratives, provide poignant insights into the human aspect of this legal transformation. 14th Amendment, Rights of Citizenship. Ratified on July 9, 1868, the 14th Amendment was a significant structural change in post-Civil War America. This amendment addresses citizenship rights and equal protection under the law, fundamentally reshaping the relationship between the federal government and the states. The 14th Amendment's most famous clause, the Equal Protection Clause, states, "No state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws." This amendment was crucial in extending civil rights to all citizens, particularly the newly freed African Americans. It established that anyone born or naturalized in the United States is a citizen and thus entitled to equal protection under the law. The amendment also included the Due Process Clause, which protects individuals from state abuses of power. Over time, the 14th Amendment has been the basis for many landmark Supreme Court decisions, such as Brown v. Boards of Education, which ended racial segregation in public schools. 15th Amendment, Right to Vote. The 15th Amendment, ratified on February 3, 1870, was another critical step in the struggle for civil rights. This amendment prohibits the denial of the right to vote based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. It aimed to enfranchise African American men who had been excluded from the electoral process, even after the abolition of slavery. Despite its intentions, the 15th Amendment faced significant resistance in many states, where discriminatory practices such as literacy tests, poll taxes, and intimidation tactics were used to suppress the black vote. It wasn't until the civil rights movement of the 1960s, with legislation like the Voting Rights Act of 1965, that the promise of the 15th Amendment began to be fully realized. The courage and perseverance of civil rights activists during this period underscore the ongoing struggle to achieve true equality. 16th Amendment, Income Tax. Ratified on February 3, 1913, the 16th Amendment grants the federal government the authority to collect income tax without apportioning it among the states or basing it on the U.S. Census. This amendment addressed a significant limitation in the government's ability to generate revenue, as prior attempts to impose an income tax had been struck down by the Supreme Court. The introduction of a federal income tax system transformed the American economy and government. It provided a stable and substantial source of revenue that funded critical public services and infrastructure. The 16th Amendment paved the way for the modern fiscal state, enabling the federal government to play a more active role in addressing social and economic issues. 17th Amendment, Direct Election of Senators. Before the 17th Amendment, U.S. senators were chosen by state legislatures, a process that was often marred by corruption and inefficiency. Ratified on April 8, 1913, the 17th Amendment changed that by mandating the direct election of senators by the people. This shift aimed to make the Senate more responsive to the public and reduce the influence of special interests. The direct election of senators was a significant step towards greater democratic participation and accountability. It aligned the Senate more closely with the principles of representative democracy, giving citizens a direct voice in selecting their federal legislators. The amendment also highlighted the progressive era's broader push for reforms that expanded democracy and curbed corruption. 18th Amendment, Prohibition of Alcohol. The 18th Amendment, ratified on January 16, 1919, prohibited the manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcoholic beverages. This amendment, later repealed by the 21st Amendment, marked the beginning of Prohibition, a period characterized by significant social and legal upheaval. Prohibition was driven by a coalition of temperance advocates, religious groups, and progressive reformers who believed that alcohol was the root of many societal problems. However, the amendment's implementation faced numerous challenges. It led to the rise of illegal speakeasies, organized crime, and widespread disregard for the law. The unintended consequences of prohibition highlighted the complexities of legislating morality and ultimately led to its repeal in 1933. 19th Amendment, Women's Right to Vote. The 19th Amendment, ratified on August 18, 1920, granted women the right to vote, a major milestone in the women's suffrage movement. The amendment's straightforward language belies the decades of activism, protests, and perseverance that led to its passage. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. The ratification of the 19th Amendment marked a significant victory for gender equality and expanded the democratic principles of the nation. It enfranchised millions of women. The women's suffrage movement's leaders, such as Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Alice Paul, are celebrated for their tireless efforts to secure this fundamental right. 20th Amendment, Terms of President, Vice President, Congress. The 20th Amendment, ratified on January 23, 1933, changes the dates on which the terms of the President, Vice President, and Congress begin and end. Known as the Lame Duck Amendment, it was designed to reduce the period between the election and the start of the new congressional and presidential terms. The amendment moved the beginning of the presidential and vice presidential terms from March 4th to January 20th and the start of congressional terms to January 3rd. This change aimed to shorten the lame duck period, during which outgoing officials who were not re-elected remained in office. By expediting the transition of power, the 20th Amendment sought to make the government more responsive and efficient. 21st Amendment, Repeal of Prohibition. Ratified on December 5, 1933, the 21st Amendment repealed the 18th Amendment, ending national prohibition. This amendment is unique in that it is the only one to have been ratified by state conventions rather than state legislatures, reflecting the widespread demand for its passage. The repeal of prohibition marked the recognition of its failure to achieve its intended goals. Instead of reducing crime and improving public morals, prohibition had led to a surge in illegal activities and undermined respect for the law. The 21st Amendment restored the legal sale and regulation of alcohol, allowing states to establish their own laws regarding its control. 22nd Amendment, Presidential Term Limits. The 22nd Amendment, ratified on February 27, 1951, limits the president to 2 terms in office. This amendment was a response to President Franklin D. Roosevelt's unprecedented 4 terms in office, which had raised concerns about the concentration of power in the executive branch. The amendment states, "No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice." By establishing term limits, the 22nd Amendment aimed to prevent any individual from holding the presidency for an extended period and ensure regular turnover in the nation's highest office. This change reinforced the principles of democratic governance and checks and balances. 23rd Amendment, Presidential Vote for District of Columbia. Ratified on March 29, 1961, the 23rd Amendment grants residents of Washington, D.C. the right to vote for the president and vice president. Before this amendment, citizens of the nation's capital had no representation in the Electoral College, despite their contributions to the nation's political and social life. The 23rd Amendment allocates 3 electoral votes to the District of Columbia, allowing its residents to participate in presidential elections. This change extended democratic rights to the people of D.C. and acknowledged their role in the American political process. 24th Amendment, Abolition of the poll tax. The 24th Amendment, ratified on January 23, 1964, prohibits the requirement of a poll tax for voting in federal elections. Poll taxes had been used in many southern states to disenfranchise African American voters and poor whites, effectively preventing them from exercising their right to vote. By abolishing the poll tax, the 24th Amendment removed a significant barrier to voting and reinforced the principles of equal access to the ballot box. This amendment was a crucial step in the broader struggle for civil rights and voting rights, paving the way for further reforms such as the Voting Rights Act of 1965. 25th Amendment, Presidential Disability and Succession. Ratified on February 10, 1967, the 25th Amendment clarifies the procedures for presidential succession and addresses the disability of a president. This amendment was prompted by concerns about the continuity of government, particularly in the wake of President John F. Kennedy's assassination. The 25th Amendment establishes the process for the vice president to assume the presidency in the event of the president's death, resignation, or removal from office. It also provides procedures for addressing presidential disability, allowing the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to declare the president unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office. This amendment ensures the stability and continuity of executive leadership. 26th Amendment, Right to vote at age 18. Ratified on July 1, 1971, the 26th Amendment lowered the voting age from 21 to 18 years. This change was largely in response to the Vietnam War, during which many young Americans were drafted to fight but were not eligible to vote. The amendment states, "The right of citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of age." By lowering the voting age, the 26th Amendment extended democratic participation to millions of young Americans and acknowledged their maturity and responsibility. 27th Amendment, Congressional Pay Limitations. The 27th Amendment, ratified on May 7, 1992, prevents changes in congressional salaries from taking effect until after the next election of representatives. This amendment was originally proposed in 1789 as part of the Bill of Rights, but was not ratified until more than 200 years later. The amendment aims to prevent conflicts of interest by ensuring that any changes to congressional pay are subject to voter approval in the subsequent election. This provision reinforces the accountability of elected officials and aligns their financial interests with those of their constituents. Each amendment to the U.S. Constitution is a testament to the evolving nature of American democracy. These amendments reflect the nation's response to changing social, political, and economic conditions, and they safeguard the fundamental rights and freedoms of its citizens. Through these amendments, we can trace the arc of American history, understanding how each change has shaped the nation into what it is today. By examining the origins, impacts, and legacies of these amendments, we gain a deeper appreciation for the principles of democracy and the ongoing struggle to perfect the Union.